Okay, so right now we're talking about the Federal Reserve System. So we talked about money, the value of money, functions of money. We're talking about the Federal Reserve System, which is the system within the United States that is in charge of the money supply and monetary, not fiscal policy, monetary policy, which is money supply and how it controls interest rates. So let's go into the Fed. All right, what is the Fed? What is its function? How does it work? All right, so let's go back to share. And here, all right, so the Federal Reserve System, all right, is essentially controlling the monetary policy within the U.S., controlling the money supply with the U.S., within the U.S., trying to maintain and control interest rates within the United States. It's a central bank. Almost every country that I know of has a central bank. So if on the test they talk about the central bank of a country, they're talking about the monetary policy. They're talking about either the Fed or whatever the equivalent of that country's Fed. So this is a map of the Federal Reserve districts, much like circuit courts in Gov. You have 12 districts, all right, so that you can see the 12 districts there. You got Boston District, New York District, Philly District, Richmond. The Fed Board of Governors is in DC, but Richmond is 5th District. These are all the hubs. 6th District, we're in Miami, but Atlanta is our hub. You got Cleveland, 4th District, Chicago, St. Louis, 8th District, Dallas, 11th District, Kansas City, 10th District, Minneapolis, 9th District, and the 12th District, which is massive here geographically, you got San Fran. All right, so those are the 12 districts. Now, the Federal Reserve System, I'm going to kind of read these bullet points, and I have a link, if I can figure out how to do it, to something put out by the Fed. It's a little bit kitschy and cartoonish, but it has good information, and it's what you need for the test. So just go ahead and watch it. The Federal Reserve System, or the Fed, as we're going to call it, was established by Congress in 1913, holds power over money and the banking system. All right. The central governing authority for the system is what's called the Board of Governors. All right. The Fed Board of Governors. It has 7 members appointed by the president. So again, it's not political. It's appointed. It shouldn't be politicized, but it's appointed, not elected. That's a very important thing. Super important. They're appointed by the president for staggered 14-year terms. 14-year terms. Think about that. Think about congressman has a 2-year term, president has a 4-year term, senator has a 6-year term, Supreme Court has life terms, but 14-year terms for these people. Its power means the system functions like a central bank. It is a central bank. The most important part of the Fed is the FOMC, or Federal Open Market Committee. All right, it's what Wall Street people listen to, every last word they put out in their statements. Includes the 7 Board of Governors plus 5 regional Federal Reserve bank presidents whose terms alternate. I believe the chairman of the New York Fed is a permanent seat on that FOMC. They set policy on open market operations, and when the test goes over open market operations, I'll put out another video on different policies and tools of the Fed. Open market operations is the #1 tool. It's buying and selling of bonds to control the money supply. So that's what they determine in these meetings. This system has 12 districts, each with its own district bank and 2 or 3 branch banks. Miami does have a sub-branch. It's in Doral, of the Atlanta Fed. All right. They are, and this is important in both Gov and Macro, quasi-public. It's owned by the member banks, but controlled by the government it's Federal Reserve Board. Any profits go to the U.S. Treasury. All right, it's not supposed to do profits. It's supposed to. It has a dual mandate, which we'll go over. They act as bankers' banks by accepting reserve deposits from banks and making loans to banks and other financial institutions. Fed loans money from the discount window. That's the second tool of Fed, is a discount window. If there's ever banks that need to meet reserve requirements, they can. They don't often do it, but they go to the discount window. And we haven't gone over reserve requirements. I'll cover that. And charges banks the discount rate. All right, percent Fed charges private banks for loans. So there's two different rates. I might as well go over it now. There's the discount rate and the Fed funds rate. The discount rate is the rate that the Federal Reserve System charges member banks on overnight loans. The Fed funds rate, even though it has the word Fed in it, Fed funds rate is the rate that's charged bank to bank overnight loans. All right, so as an example, if the Fed loans Chase $2 million to meet reserve requirements, they would charge them the discount rate. All right, Fed to bank overnight loans. If Chase loans Citibank $2 million to meet reserve requirements over the weekend, that they would be charged the Fed funds rate. That's bank to bank. Money charged, the interest rate charged on bank to bank overnight loans. Fed funds, discount rate, Fed to bank. All right. So going back. So that's and the Fed would charge the discount rate from the discount window. All right. The Fed issues Federal Reserve notes. You might not know this, but your currency, the dollars you carry around, are technically called Federal Reserve notes. The Fed sets reserve requirements. That's the last tool of the Fed, is it sets reserve requirements. And I'll go over this in more extended, but a reserve requirement is the percent of every deposit that banks must keep in the form of currency reserves. So like if I deposit $1,000, right now, the Federal Reserve requirement, I believe, is 10%. So what they could do is they could say, all right, 10%. If Mr. Krause deposits $1,000, you have to keep $100 on reserve. And that's what we call a fractional reserve banking system. And I'll go into how that works. All right, but that's what the reserve requirement is. It's the percent of every deposit that banks must keep by law. All right, let's keep going. All right, Fed sets reserve requirements and holds the reserves. So when banks have reserves, they can hold them at the Fed. For banks and thrifts, not held as vault cash. So banks don't usually keep a ton of their reserves as vault cash. So that old what's that movie where Brad Pitt breaks into banks or breaks into casinos? That's not really, the banks don't really, Ocean's 11. They don't really hold a lot in vaults anymore. They really held it in bank reserves. So they give it to the Fed and the Fed holds it. The Fed may lend money to banks and thrifts, charging them interest. The Fed provides a check clearance. So check clearing is when you write a check, it doesn't just instantly go to that company. When you write a check and that company processes that check has to clear. And clearing means, do you have that money in your account to support that check? P.S. Always have money in your account. This is one of those, I'll give you a life financial tip. Always have money in your account to support checks. All right. If you don't, what I would advise you do, and this is unsolicited financial advice, so take it for what it is my opinion. Have what's called overdraft protection. All right. Because if you write like $100 check for whatever thing you want to buy, and that check doesn't clear, the company might charge you a bounce check fee of $40, and then your bank might charge you a bounce check fee. So that $100 item might be $180 when all's said and done because of those bounce check fees. They love fees, so don't give them an excuse. So if you have overdraft protection on your checking account, what that does is it says, all right, we'll lend you the money. You probably an oversight. You bounced this check by accident. Bounce check means you wrote a $100 check. You only had 80 in your account. You don't have enough in your account to support that check you wrote. You bounce that check. we'll cover that $20. You pay us back a small rate of interest. It's way better than being charged $40 bounce check fee on both sides. There you go. That's because my job is not just to teach you the content, it's to help you out in stuff you might not know. All right. Now, Fed acts as the fiscal agent for federal governments. So when, like, for example, they have to send out money, that's the federal government has to send out money via the Fed. Fed supervises member banks. Supervision role is very important. So they make sure member banks are up to snuff. They go in, they check their books, they make sure that they're doing what they have to do and they're maintaining fiscal responsibility or in terms of the bank policy. Monetary policy and control of money supply is a major function of the Fed. All right. Federal Reserve independence. You get a lot of, again, go down this rabbit hole on YouTube. You get a lot of people questioning the Federal Reserve and the whole structure of the fractional reserve banking system, the fact that banks can lend out money essentially they don't have. And you also get people saying we should go back to the gold standard. You have people saying the Fed should be elected, the Fed should be under more control of Congress. These are all terrible, terrible ideas. And that's not me going off the reservation. This is in your book. You don't want to politicize the Fed. And I think the past 4 years have illustrated that. A lot of politicians would, hijack the Fed if they could to say, hey, my election is coming up, cut rates to juice the economy, even if it's not economically necessary. Let me have them politically cut rates so that I can get reelected so the economy is good. Or, hey, it's a presidential election coming up. Let's have Congress. Maybe Congress it's divided government. Congress is controlled by the opposition party. Let's have the Fed raise rates, tank the economy so this guy won't get reelected. Terrible idea. The Fed should be making decisions based upon what's economically necessary, not what's politically expedient. All right, so that's just, again, that's an important concept. That's why the Fed is appointed, not elected. That's why the courts are appointed, not elected. The courts are not a popularity contest. They should not be making decisions based upon what's popular. All right, Brown v. Board. They should be making decisions based upon what's right. Controversial from time to time. Advocates of independence fear that more political ties would cause the Fed to follow expansionary policies and create too much inflation, leading to an unstable currency. There's they do fraud detection. The Fed, because they maintain currency, they do a lot in checking for counterfeits. And there's a lot of new, on the $100 bill and all the new bills, there's a lot of new counterfeit protection measures that you can look up. All right. So that's that. I just wanted to go over one more thing. Good. Senior moment. I remembered. The Fed has a dual mandate, which again, monetary policy. I have another video that I'll attach. 2 videos that I want you to watch, my students anyway, but they're both put out by the Fed. They're both good. 2 videos that the Fed has a dual mandate, 2 mandates. 1, control inflation. Make sure that inflation is kept in check. First mandate. Second mandate is to promote economic growth, and that's what the Fed just did with the rate cuts. So control inflation when it's necessary, if the economy is getting overheated, and if there's high unemployment, maybe cut rates to promote economic growth. So that's the dual mandate. All right, that's the Fed. We'll come back with more videos today.